My name is Jennifer Clark, and I'm 34 years old. People think betrayals are loud things. Slammed doors, shattered plates, screaming matches that echo down the hallway. I used to think that too. I thought if love ever cracked open, the sound would be unbearable. But the truth is, when my world broke, it was silent. Utterly, devastatingly silent. It was a Tuesday. I was working from home, papers spread across the dining table, the steady hum of my laptop syncing files between devices. Nothing unusual. Until Daniel's messages appeared on the shared tablet we both used. He never logged out, why would he? That small arrogance of his was my undoing. I stared not at a random pop-up, but a conversation. His words, his promises. Not to me, but to Claire. Claire the ex, he swore had been toxic, the past he swore he'd shut tight like a locked door. My breath just stopped. Her name over and over again threaded between half-finished dreams. I can't wait any longer, Danny. I need us to be real again. I know, just a little more patience. I'm just waiting for her inheritance. Then I'm yours. Her inheritance. My inheritance. The money my grandmother had left me a nest egg, a small fortune by ordinary standards. Enough to finally put down roots, buy a modest house, maybe build a future. The future I thought I was building with him. My chest hollowed out. I reread the lines until the words burned behind my eyes. It wasn't doubt I was dealing with. Not a partner second-guessing love. No, what I had in front of me was a plan, a strategy. A predator who thought he was patient enough to wait until the prize was delivered. The strangest thing was the calm that came over me. No sobbing, no storming through the apartment to confront him, no hysteria. Just a bone-deep clarity that settled in like ice. If he was playing me like this, then I had to play back. I looked around our apartment, the one I paid for. The framed vacation photos where we smiled like lovers. The overpriced espresso machine he insisted I splurge on the little life I thought was ours. Now it looked staged, a set. And me, just the actress who hadn't read the script. I closed the tablet, hands steady, though my stomach was tumbling. The betrayal didn't erupt like thunder. It whispered like a knife sliding between ribs. And in that silence, I knew I couldn't give him the satisfaction of a messy explosion. No Daniel needed to reveal himself for what he was. And I already felt the first stirrings of a plan. I thought of something my grandmother once told me. When people show you their hunger, don't feed them. Watch them starve on their own lies. That Tuesday evening, I decided to watch, to wait, to test if Daniel was as predictable as his greed made him seem. I forced myself to cook dinner as usual. I asked about his day. Smiled where I needed to. He laughed oblivious. But I was watching closely the way his eyes flicked to his phone when a message buzzed the hollow way he said "we" when I talked about the future. Every detail was a clue. Every breath he took felt like evidence. Inside, I was already grieving, not for him, but for the woman I'd been before that Tuesday. She had believed in him. She had dreamed alongside him. She was gone now. And what remained of me was colder, sharper, ready to see how far Daniel's hunger would drive him and how fast it would consume him. The night after I discovered the messages, I lay awake beside Daniel. His breathing was steady, his arm draped across me like a claim. To him, I was still his possession, still the golden goose, fattening quietly until the inheritance dropped. But my grandmother had left me more than money. She had left me clarity. She used to say, if you want to know someone's truth, take away what they want most and see what's left. That line pulsed in my head all night. By morning, I had my test. It was almost too easy. A quick search online, a generic bankruptcy notice template, and 20 minutes with a fine point pen. I filled in my name, forged a case number, added the logo of a fake law firm. It didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to look real enough for a man, desperate to see what he wanted to see. I slid the paper halfway under a stack of mail on my desk. Not hidden, not flaunted, just waiting for curious eyes. The bait. For the next 3 days, I played the perfect girlfriend. Dinner on the table, soft laughter at his jokes, a hand on his back when he sat down. All the while I watched. And then I saw the flicker of something in his face when he sat at my desk pretending to look for a charger, the slight tightening around his mouth the way he tried not to meet my eyes afterward. He had seen it. I knew before he knew that he was gone. That evening, I took a long walk pretending I needed fresh air. When I came back, the apartment was silent. Not the comforting kind of silence, but the hollow, abandoned kind. On the kitchen counter sat a folded note. His handwriting was neat, deliberate. Jennifer, I'm sorry. I just can't do this anymore. The financial instability is too much pressure for me. I need time to figure things out on my own. I wish you the best. That was it. No fight, no questions, no attempt to hold on. Just a tactical retreat, clean and efficient, like he'd been waiting for the signal to cut ties. I sank to the floor of my empty living room, not crying, just listening to the echo of my own breath in a space stripped of him. What hurt wasn't his absence. It was the speed of it. How quickly he'd severed what I thought was love. How disposable I had been the moment I became in his mind worthless. The clarity was brutal, but it was also freeing. He hadn't left me because I failed. He'd left because his plan had failed. In that silence, grief gave way to something harder. Purpose. I packed his clothes into boxes over the next few days. I folded shirts that still smelled faintly of his cologne, taped shut the life he thought he was abandoning with triumph. Each box felt less like loss and more like evidence. I wasn't angry. Anger would have given him power. Instead, I felt a steady rising certainty. Daniel believed he had walked out clean, but I knew better. The truth has a way of circling back, and soon enough, so would he. 3 weeks later, I stood on the porch of a small 2-bedroom house with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the kind of place Daniel and I had scrolled through together on Zillow while he pretended to plan a future. But it was mine, entirely mine. The inheritance money had finally cleared. Buying in cash made the process surprisingly quick. The realtor handed me a single brass key cool and heavy in my palm. I should have felt bittersweet. Instead, I felt something close to rebirth. That night, I sat on the front steps with a beer in one hand and the key in the other. I took a photo, just me, no makeup hair, messy from the humidity, smiling faintly at the camera. I posted it on Instagram with a simple caption, "New Beginnings." No tags, no fanfare, just a quiet declaration to the world that I was still here. It took 7 minutes. My phone lit up first with Daniel's name, then again, then a text, then another call. I ignored them, my smile never wavering. Claire's number appeared next. A flurry of messages followed confusion, pleading, then irritation. My phone buzzed like a trapped insect in my hand. I placed it face down beside me and watched the sky turn indigo. They weren't gone. They had just been waiting for what they thought was their payday. For a week, I let their calls and texts stack up like unread mail. The voicemails became almost comical. Daniel started sweet. "Jennifer, I saw your post. I'm worried. I don't understand what happened with the bankruptcy letter. Please call me back." Claire, less subtle. "You're sick. You tricked him. You tricked both of us. You can't just run off and steal what was supposed to be ours." I played them on speaker while unpacking boxes, the sound of their panic filling the walls of my new home like a twisted soundtrack. And for the first time since that Tuesday when everything broke, I laughed. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't triumphant. It was simply the sound of someone who finally understood that betrayal has a rhythm, quiet at first, then frantic, then self-destructive. The storm had only just begun. After days of silence, I finally answered one of Daniel's calls. It was a Wednesday evening, boxes still stacked around me like makeshift furniture. I pressed the phone to my ear, and before I could even speak, his voice rushed out, syrupy and urgent. "Oh my God, Jennifer, you're okay. I was so worried. I saw that bankruptcy letter, and then you disappeared, and now you have a house. Please tell me what's going on." His performance was almost flawless. Almost. I kept my voice steady. "You left Daniel. You left a note saying you couldn't handle the pressure. Remember." There was a pause and then the shift. "I left because I thought you were ruined." How could you do that to me? How could you lie to me like that? Gaslighting as predictable as clockwork. The note was pretty clear, I said, slicing open another moving box with a kitchen knife. "You needed financial stability, and you decided you couldn't get that with me. End of story." His voice hardened. "That's not fair. I invested years in us. I helped you plan. That money, this house, it was supposed to be ours. You don't get to just take it all for yourself." The sheer audacity made me laugh, a low sound that seemed to throw him off balance. "You looked at Zillow with me, Daniel," I said coldly. "Scrolling listings isn't an investment. And no, you don't get a share of something you were only waiting to inherit like a vulture." Silence. For 10 long seconds, he said nothing. And then an explosion. "You're unbelievable. After everything I gave you, you think you can just cut me out like this. You owe me." I didn't hang up. I wanted to hear every word. I wanted to remember them. But it wasn't just Daniel anymore. Claire had started her own campaign. First came the texts, then the comments under my photo. Don't believe her lies. She manipulated us both. That house should have been ours. Then one afternoon, Daniel's voice rang through again, this time sharper. If you don't make this right, Jennifer, we'll take you to court. You can't just toy with people's lives and think there won't be consequences. Instead of fear, I felt a peculiar calm. He truly didn't see it the hole he and Claire were digging deeper with every frantic word. Let them threaten. Let them scramble. I wasn't the one on trial here. The storm was still gathering, and I was ready to watch it break. The envelope arrived on a Friday morning. Thick, official-looking my name typed neatly on the front. I opened it, standing in the sunlit kitchen of my new house, coffee cooling in my hand. Inside, a small claims lawsuit, filed by Daniel Hayes. $5,000. Compensation for emotional distress and contributions to financial planning for our shared future. The gall nearly made me laugh. He had turned my quiet little trap into the foundation of a legal drama where he was the victim. But that wasn't all. Later that day, my old landlord called, his voice heavy with apology. My security deposit, $2,850, had already been released. To Daniel. Since his name was still on the lease, he'd gone into the office the day after I moved out. Claimed I'd given him permission, signed the paperwork, and walked away with my money. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, but my voice stayed even. So it's a civil matter now. Yes, the landlord sighed. I'm sorry, Jennifer. Sorry, that word had become a kind of refrain in my life. But I wasn't crumbling. The betrayal had hardened into purpose. I opened a folder on my desk and started building a case. Exhibit A. His breakup note citing financial instability. Exhibit B. The messages to Claire highlighted. I'm just waiting for her inheritance. Then I'm yours. Exhibit C. The timeline proving my grandmother's money cleared weeks after he abandoned me. I wasn't telling a story anymore. I was simply arranging the evidence and letting the truth speak. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. I was leaving my office downtown when I heard my name barked across the plaza. Daniel was striding toward me, face twisted in a mask of fury. Claire trailed close behind, lips pressed tight. We need to talk, he snapped, planting himself in my path. He was taller, broader looming, like he could intimidate me back into submission. I didn't flinch. No, we don't. You're going to make this right, he hissed. You humiliated me. You're a psycho, Jennifer. Who fakes bankruptcy notices? Who does that? The only game, I said calmly, meeting his eyes, was the one you played with me. For money. His mouth curled into a smirk. She invested years in you. You owe her something. The only thing I'm owed, I said evenly, is my $2,850 deposit, the one you stole. That smirk deepened, and he leaned in close, his voice low. She told me you said she could have it. Who do you think they'll believe? His arrogance was a gift. I memorized every word. Later, I wrote it down in an email to myself, date, time, exact phrasing. Another perfect piece of evidence. By the time the court date arrived, I felt oddly calm. The courtroom was fluorescent and unimpressive, a dozen worn-out chairs, a judge in her 60s with sharp eyes that didn't miss much. Daniel and Claire sat together, whispering like conspirators. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit. She looked polished, almost saintly, as though costume could absolve guilt. Evelyn, I caught myself almost thinking her name, but no. Claire. She spoke first, a performance worthy of a stage, tearful trembling, describing how I deceived her partner, the psychological toll the future I'd stolen. Then it was my turn. I didn't cry. I didn't plead. I placed documents on the judge's bench, one by one, my voice calm, deliberate. Exhibit A, his breakup note. His own words leaving me over finances. Exhibit B, the text messages. I'm just waiting for her inheritance. Exhibit C, the timeline proving the inheritance cleared after he had already walked out. The judge's gaze shifted to Daniel. For the first time, his composure cracked. She dismissed his case with a sharp wave of her hand. Meritless, she said, her voice like a gavel striking. An audacious waste of this court's time. Then came my counterclaim, the stolen deposit. Daniel tried to repeat his story, insisting I had given him permission. Claire chimed in, eager nodding too quickly. The judge tilted her head. So, Mr. Hayes, you're saying you were aware of this agreement? Daniel puffed his chest. Yes, she told me herself. And that was his undoing. I recounted the confrontation outside my office, repeating his smug admission word for word. I presented my time-stamped notes. The contradiction was glaring, his bullying bravado in private against his polished act in court. The judge's lips thinned. Enough. Ms. Clark, you will be refunded the full amount of your deposit plus court costs. The gavel came down. Just like that, the walls Daniel and Claire had built around their story collapsed in one clean strike. Outside, their whispers turned to sharp, hissing blame. They had walked in united. They left fractured, their alliance crumbling before my eyes. And me, I walked into the sunlight, not triumphant, not vengeful, just steady. The truth had spoken louder than either of them ever could. The story of that courtroom spread faster than Daniel's lies ever had. Mutual friends who had drifted away during the chaos started sending awkward, hesitant texts. "Jennifer, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I should have trusted you. Can we talk?" I didn't have the energy to soothe their guilt. I just replied, "No worries," because by then their validation wasn't the prize. The prize was silence. And the silence was no longer empty. Word of the judgment followed Daniel back into his professional life. Sales is a career built on reputation, on trust. People whisper. Clients reconsider. His temper, once charmingly passionate, was suddenly a liability. I heard from a former coworker that his company had barred him from a client building after he caused a scene in the lobby. Claire wasn't spared either. The public unraveling of their case left her credibility shredded. She was no longer the wronged ex-girlfriend standing by her man. She was just another liar exposed in daylight. And me, I stayed still. I planted a garden. I replaced the hollow echo of betrayal with the hum of my own life. Mornings were filled with birdsong instead of voicemail tirades. Evenings with the quiet satisfaction of building something real, brick by brick, root by root. Then one last message came through before I blocked them both for good. A single text from Daniel. "I hope you're happy, in your stupid house all alone. You ruined my life." I stared at it for a moment, not with anger, not with triumph, with nothing. It was just noise from a ghost. I deleted it. Because the truth was, I hadn't ruined his life. He had. He and Claire had set their own trap blind to how obvious it was. All I did was step aside and let them fall into it. Betrayal leaves scars, yes. A thin line across the heart that never fully fades. But scars aren't wounds. They're proof of healing. And the best revenge. It wasn't the judgment in court. It wasn't the whispers that followed Daniel through his career, or the fractures in his relationship with Claire. The best revenge was quieter. It was sitting on this porch of my little house, key warm in my hand, garden blooming at my feet, knowing that I had faced the worst with a steady voice and a clear head.